Well, hi there. Today I'm wanting to talk about authentic womanhood, and I know that that's a recipe for getting me into major trouble, but let's launch in anyway. In the last couple of days, we spoke about violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, and so on. And men are mostly the perpetrators of these social evils. And abuse of power is definitely not the biblical order. Some people seem to believe that men and women stand in opposition to each other. The idea that men and women stand in opposition to each other is not how God intended us to live. We need to go back to the beginnings of humanity and see how God intended men and women to live together. In Genesis 1:27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. This verse makes it clear that God was the creator of humankind. It was not an accident. Creation came about as a part of God's design and deliberate purpose. The fact that we are male and female is also part of God's deliberate design. There are differences between men and women, and these differences were intended by God. Part of the acceptance of our masculinity or femininity is accepting the differences that God has endowed us with. God's verdict on this order of creation was that it was very good. But it could only be declared very good after the woman was placed alongside the man. In Genesis 2:18, it says, "The Lord God said, it is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." Eve did not come along to help Adam with the tasks, but to help him find completion within his own personality. Adam could not reach wholeness without Eve. All that Adam's nature demanded for its completion, physically, intellectually, and socially, was included in the woman. And all that Eve's nature demanded for its completion, physically, intellectually, and socially, was included in the man. God's created order was that women and men are different but complementary and reliant on each other. A problem with the feminist movement is that there is an attempt to divide the issues that humans face into women's issues and men's problems. God would see them as joint problems of humanity. Secondly, they attempt to drive a wedge between men and women so that people are polarised. Dissension or party spirit, as some versions term it, are mentioned in Galatians 5 as the acts of the sinful nature. Men and women are designed to complement each other's natures. But as we read on in chapter 3 of Genesis, with the fall of humanity, one of the curses is enmity between men and women. There was a curse on the serpent in verse 14, there was a curse on childbirth and male and female relationships in verse 16, a curse on work in verse 17, and of course illness and death is part of the overall curse of the fall. But neither the woman nor the man are cursed directly, because they're candidates for forgiveness and restoration. Verse 16 tells us that part of the consequence of the fall of Adam and Eve was that Eve was told, your husband will rule over you. So the relationship between men and women would be disturbed by sinful inclinations towards the abuse of authority. From that time on, men would try to dominate women. And sin always distorts relationships. So now we have to deal with selfishness, pride, and one-upmanship. Sin causes husbands to try to dominate their wives, and wives to try and dominate their husbands. And neither is God's ideal. Sin has brought enmity between men and women. If it is sin that has brought enmity between men and women, we must be dedicated to building peace and harmony between men and women. And that is what is necessitated in the process to ensure that justice is given freely to both men and women. Would you join me again tomorrow as we think about this one more time? Bye for now.